What is going on, everybody? It's Skills here, and today we're going to be talking about Gear 2.0. This is some more information I was able to gather on it. If you haven't watched my Dummies Guide to Gear 2.0 and everything that we know about it, I would definitely check that video. I'll put a link to it in the description. It's a great video. A lot of people had a lot of really good feedback about it, and they said, hey, this kind of summed up everything I really needed to know. But I've been gathering more and more information due to Frederick Thailander, one of the devs for the Division 2 at Massive. And he answers a lot of questions on Twitter, and this was one of the first questions that popped up on my feed, and I was like, wow, this is actually a pretty good one. Someone asked, I don't know if I missed part of the state of the game, but what will happen if one of my pieces of gear has weapon damage and armor? Which one's gonna stay? And then Frederick comes back and says none of them. They will be converted to another red or blue stat respectively, and you'll get a core attribute that is determined by the brand of the item. Offensive brands get weapon damage, defensive get armor, but if it was a gear score 500 item, it's going to have a very high roll. So that's just something to keep in mind. So right now it's looking like if you have, say, a defensive piece, which is probably a healer guard, you'll probably get an armor roll. If you get an offensive piece, maybe I'm going to say Wyvern, well, that would have a red roll. It's hard to say what pieces are going to be defensive and offensive, but I'm pretty sure healer guard, you know, it's always been for tankiness, so I'm gonna say that was probably more defensive, so the core attribute's probably gonna roll armor on there. Now we get into the next question that kind of like goes right into what he was talking about. Someone says, I think it's very important to the community that we keep those 15% weapon damage rolls, those 30% armor roll in our stash. A little assurance that this will be the case would go a long way. It's very important to us. He capitalized very. Frederick answers back with, you will not capitalize not. Armor percentage literally won't exist, for example, and if it stayed around, it would create legacy pieces that could no longer be obtained, forever disrupting the meta already happening with the vendor pieces, which is true. You guys know that if you guys got that 25% armor roll or that 30% armor roll, the chances of you getting a roll like that again with a nice roll is rare, and not a lot of people have them. So those people who do have them, their builds are always going to be a little bit better because they have those percentage armor rolls, and that's always been the case. Like, those items don't drop. Like, I've never seen a 30% armor roll drop in the open world or in the DZ, and I farmed a lot on multiple characters, multiple accounts. The only time I've gotten any of those pieces was from the vendor back in the day when you could buy at a lower vendor and get the percentage armor because the armor was lower, but the percentage armor was higher. The next question actually just kind of falls into everything we were just talking about. Someone asked, when can we get some confirmation as to what gear set is aimed at what? So what he's asking is, which gear set's going to be offensive? Which gear set's going to be defensive? And so on. Frederick answers with, of course we'll let you know. We've only had one session of State of the Game. There's a lot of info and discussions going forward. Have patience. So as all of you guys know, that the last State of the Game was the first State of the Game that they actually dove into Gear 2.0, and going forward in the future State of the Game starting tomorrow, after the release of this video, which was released on Tuesday, on Wednesday, they'll have the next State of the Game. So that's just something to look forward to on more information on all the changes coming to Gear 2.0. The next question actually addresses hazard protection. I know that's a big question for a lot of you guys, wondering about how hazard protection is going to work with the changes. Mason comes out and says, hey, I'm not sure I agree with the level of sacrifice for hazard protection. The DZ server fights will obviously become 8 people spamming status effects until you die. Also, it makes builds that utilize giant bleed hives to stick and move indefinitely very powerful, as you can't run. And then Frederick said, we are currently playing the DZ internally with these changes, and yes, status effects are powerful, but at least currently it means fighting at longer ranges to avoid those effects. Close range dancing has reduced, at least in our playing. Now, one thing I've been doing is I've been running builds without a lot of hazard protection just to kind of prepare for this, to see how it's going to affect my build. Not just affect my build, but affect my play style. And I've been able to adapt to people when they run the Stinger Hive and stuff. And I kind of recommend some of you guys, if you guys haven't been doing that, maybe play with something that doesn't have 100% hazard protection. Maybe drop it down to something that maybe has like 50% hazard protection. And then just kind of play around with how would you attack somebody who's dropping a Stinger Hive or who's putting a status effect on you, and then work around that. I know the builds aren't going to be the same, the armor's not going to be the same, but that's just something for you guys to kind of start working around, start practicing, starting getting ready for, because it's better to kind of get ready for it now than wait till all the changes come, with hazard protection not being as strong as it is right now. Because remember, right now, if you put 100% hazard protection on your build, there is nothing that's going to affect you status wise. You'll be perfectly fine. It won't even affect you at all. But that's not going to be the case after they make the changes in the future. Now, that same person, Mason, comes back and says, I understand what you're saying, but what is it counter to a team running 4 different status effects now? Is that a reasonable or fun meta to play against long term? Also, unless TTK has been drastically reduced by the changes, it remains easy to close engage distance and apply statuses. Frederick comes back and says, it is quite reduced since there is no percentage armor, and if you want to damage, you have to sacrifice weapon damage. Now, what I assume he's saying right here is, yes, you can run these skill builds, but now you're going to have to spec into those skill builds. So you're not going to hit people as hard as you want, and you're going to have to sacrifice armor. So yeah, you're going to be putting out skill builds that hit really hard, but you're going to be like a glass cannon skill build, and that's what I was gathering from him. So those people who are trying to put those status effects on you, they're going to be more of a glass cannon, and if you are built like an armor, you'll be able to stay alive because you'll just be that much tankier, and that way you can drop them. So there's going to be a give and take for everything, it seems. If you want to be a tank, you're going to have to spec into tank, and you're not going to hit as hard. If you want to be a glass cannon, well, you have to spec into weapon damage. And if you want to be some type of skill build, you're going to have to spec into skill tier. Now, I know a lot of people were asking about damage to elites, and someone comes out and says, is there going to be a revamp of explosive damage? Also, what is replacing damage to elites? And then Frederick comes back as, nothing is replacing damage to elites, and explosive damage does what it's supposed to, but it will not be available as an attribute on gear. Skill damage will. This will ensure all skills scale better with rolls, since explosive skills can't double dip with 2 stats that enhance them. If you guys remember, on chest pieces, you used to be able to get something that's had explosive damage on it, and it was a yellow roll on the chest piece. So no longer will we be able to get that extra explosive damage on the chest piece, but we'll be able to still get that talent that provides the explosive damage. Now, if you are paying attention to the Gear 2.0, they are removing the talent requirements. And someone asked, I don't understand the removal of talent requirements, to be honest. What would stop a hybrid build, even with some weapon damage, equipping glass cannon? And then Frederick says, you can do that. Notice that glass cannon amplifies weapon damage, meaning if you have less red core stats, it will do less damage, and you'll have the loss of 50% of the power of your talents that could have been survival or skill oriented. So really, then you're not a hybrid, you're more of a DPS. So that's what they're going with this patch coming up, and I think it's a good thing. Like, if you want to be a hybrid, you're gonna have to sacrifice something. Right now, we could have 500k armor, 3000 skill power, and still put out some of the nastiest DPS that some of the hardest hitting builds put out right now in the Division 2. And they want to kind of get away from that. They don't want you to be a god in skill, a god in DPS, and a god in defense, right? You got to sacrifice something, and that creates a better balance in the game, and then hopefully more team synergy. But I do hope that there is a way to create really good hybrid builds for those solo players. I think the next question a lot of you guys are going to like. James asked, buzzing from these changes coming this year, just a small quality of life, can we have a little indicator of the mods when it drops if it's better than the current best in slot? Can't tell you how long I spent checking the name, slot, and percentage on dropping mods to see if it's good. And then Frederick says, you absolutely can, and we'll have that. And I know everybody's raving about the huge changes, but I think these small changes just make the quality of life of the Division 2 better. And that's one of them right there. Just getting a little indicator letting you know, hey, this mod is better than your best in slot. So the next question was another quality of life change. I'm not going to read the first part because Frederick only answers the bottom part. It says, it would be nice to show weapon-based damage all the time. Frederick comes back and says, weapon-based damage is shown with a bonus roll as a separate bar. So it looks like from now on we'll be able to see what the weapon-based damage without having to toggle it on and off at the bottom. I'm really excited for all the changes for Gear 2.0, quality of life coming. I think this is going to be a really good step in the right direction, and then I have nothing but positive vibes for Gear 2.0. Now, one last thing I did want to touch on is I know a lot of you guys were asking about exotics. Are they being revamped? And 100% they are. Frederick does say the revamped Pestilence is pretty good, and I'll be honest. And I can't wait to see what each one of these weapons, each one of the exotics, how they're revamped and how good they are. Imagine what the Eagle Bear revamp version is going to be. I don't know, but woo, I'm excited. Let me know what you guys think about this. Think about all the new information I was able to bring to you. If you guys enjoy videos like this, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. But what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys again. Until the next one, Nothing But Skills is out.